So, how does a society that literally banned Christmas suddenly end up inventing the modern novel? It sounds impossible, right? Well, over the next few minutes, we're going to dive into this 138-year cultural explosion that took England from a total lockdown on fun to creating newspapers, satire, and yeah, the very foundations of the stories we still binge watch and read today.
Okay, so you really have to see the year 1660 as this massive dividing line. On one side, you've got 11 years of Puritan rule. Think total austerity. Theaters are shuttered, holidays are forbidden. Then, bam, King Charles II comes back from exile in France, and he brings with him a serious taste for luxury, for parties, for spectacle. This wasn't just a new guy in charge. It was like the starting gun for a full-blown cultural revolution.
And what a party it was. This first phase from 1660 to 1700 is just chaotic, brilliant, and honestly pretty scandalous. This is the moment where more than a decade of pent-up creative energy just gets completely uncorked, and it changes everything, starting with the theater. So one of the very first things the king does is throw open the theater doors, and the change is instant and radical. For the first time ever on an English stage, you have actual women playing the female roles, not teenage boys. You combine that with brand new movable scenery, and theater just becomes more spectacular and way more controversial than anyone had ever seen. It was a total game changer. And we have this amazing first-hand account from the famous diarist Samuel Pepys. He's this respectable government official, right? And he writes in his diary that he found Shakespeare kind of boring, but he absolutely could not get enough of these new, super body comedies that were suddenly the talk of the town. And this era just churned out literary superstars. You had guys like Wycherley and Etheridge, who basically invented the comedy of manners, these incredibly witty, cynical plays that just mercilessly mocked the high society lifestyle. John Dryden becomes the first ever poet laureate. Even the old Puritan John Milton publishes his masterpiece, Paradise Lost. And, maybe most importantly, you have Aphra Behn, who becomes the first woman in England to actually make a living as a professional writer. Huge! All right, let's move into our second act. As we roll into the 1700s, all that wild, chaotic energy of the Restoration starts to find a new home. And it's not in the royal court or the theater. It's in a brand new kind of public space that, believe me, changed everything. Just look at this number for a second. 3,000. By the early 18th century, London was just saturated with coffeehouses. And this was not just about people wanting a caffeine hit. No, this was a fundamental change in how society worked, and especially in how ideas got shared. And this is what they created, this incredible new public square. For the price of a single penny coffee, you could sit there all day, read all the latest pamphlets and newspapers, and argue about everything, politics, art, science, with people from totally different walks of life. It was messy, it was loud, it was democratic. It was basically the 18th century version of an internet forum, just with more wigs. So in this new world of public debate, the sharpest tool in your arsenal was your wit. The absolute dominant literary form becomes satire, this amazing way to critique society, dunk on politicians, and point out human foolishness, all with a sharp sense of humor. And there were two guys who were the undisputed kings of this. On one side, you've got Alexander Pope, an absolute genius with words, a master of the rhyming couplet, that perfect two-line punch, who could take a silly little social incident and blow it up into a work of high art. And on the other side, you've got the ferocious Jonathan Swift, who used the most savage irony you can imagine, like in A Modest Proposal, to just scream at the world about the injustices he saw. Two totally different styles, but both were using satire to make people wake up and think. And while all this is going on, something else massive is happening. The novel as we know it is being born. And it didn't just appear out of nowhere. First, you have Daniel Defoe, who publishes Robinson Crusoe and kind of pretends it's a true travel diary. Then Samuel Richardson comes along with Pamela, a story told entirely through letters. And then Henry Fielding basically responds to that with these sprawling adventure stories full of flawed, funny, really relatable characters. A whole new way of storytelling was being pieced together, one book at a time. Okay, on to our third and final act. After all that public wits and sharp political satire, the whole cultural mood starts to take a major turn. The focus shifts inward, away from the noisy coffee house and into the private world of personal feelings and emotions. And it is such a fascinating pivot. All of a sudden, literature and art get obsessed with feeling.
People find this new beauty in things that are old, a little broken, and emotionally powerful. Think ancient ruins, quiet country graveyards. Melancholy actually becomes fashionable. It's not about being clever in public anymore. It's about feeling things deeply, in private. The giant of this age is the incredible Samuel Johnson, the guy who pretty much single-handedly put together the first real English dictionary. And his definition of the word network here tells you everything you need to know about his brain. Instead of a simple definition, he gives us this masterpiece of complexity. It's so precise, it's almost obsessive. You can just feel him trying to impose perfect logical order on language, even as the world around him was diving headfirst into emotional chaos.
And this new focus on feeling led to some genuinely wild experiments in writing. The best example has to be Lawrence Stern's novel Tristram Shandy. I mean, this book plays with the whole idea of what a book even is. It has visual gags, like a completely jet black page to signify a character's death. It was bizarre, it was hilarious, and it was deeply sentimental, the absolute perfect product of its time.
So, what's the takeaway here? Why does any of this 18th century stuff matter to us now? Well, because the cultural DNA that was formed back then didn't just vanish. Actually, it directly shaped how we tell stories, how we argue, and how we see the world today.
Just check out this timeline. The serialized novels of the 1720s, which were designed to get readers hooked and waiting for the next installment, that's the great-great-grandfather of the weekly TV show. And that, of course, evolved directly into the way we binge-watch entire seasons today. The technology is totally different, but that core desire for an ongoing story, it's exactly the same. And the legacy is even deeper than that. You know that chaotic, argumentative, free-for-all vibe of the coffee house? That is our online comment sections. The sharp, sarcastic wit of Pope and Swift, it became a foundation of modern comedy. The novel became mass entertainment you could take anywhere. And maybe the biggest thing of all, this era solidified this powerful, romantic idea that one person with just a pen could stand up to power and actually change the way people think.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question, doesn't it? In our world of nonstop content and endless digital noise, does that core 18th century idea still hold up? Can one person with a keyboard still change the world? Now that's a legacy really worth thinking about.